This is Roger Stone. The holidays are here, and it's the time of year when travel, crowds, and cold weather mean one thing. Everybody's getting sick. And in moments like this, you don't want to rely on the bureaucracy, the nonsense, or the slow-moving medical machine. You want control. You want to be prepared. You want options. That's why I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy, a company that actually puts you in charge of your health. You can go to allfamilypharmacy.com/stone, place your order online, and a licensed physician reviews it. Once approved, your medication ships directly to your doorstep. Fast, private, and secure. So whether you're looking for ivermectin, antibiotics, or everyday maintenance medications, All Family Pharmacy now has you covered. No waiting rooms, no runaround, no interference. This holiday season, don't gamble with your health or your family's health. Stay prepared, stay protected, stay in control. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/stone and now save 10% with code STONE10. Take charge of your health because nobody cares about your freedom more than you do.
What if an appliance emergency didn't have to be? If your appliances suddenly decided they were done, don't stress. Best Buy has you covered with a wide variety of major appliances from trusted brands, in stock and available now. So you don't have to worry about laundry piling up, refilling the fridge, or that big dinner party you're hosting. Because Best Buy has the knowledge and expertise to get you the right appliance for your home. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Katz and Cosby on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Well, I just returned from what could be the greatest single and largest single gathering of pro-family, pro-freedom, pro-U.S. Constitution, pro-God young people in America's history. I went to the Turning Point USA's America Fest 2025 in Phoenix, Arizona. It was an extraordinary event. Had an all-star lineup of important conservative speakers, including highlights by Vice President J.D. Vance, who spoke almost immediately after me, as well as the National Security Advisor, Tulsi Gabbard. Excellent speech by Tucker Carlson, my good friend Jack Posobiec, and a number of others. Because I had but 10 minutes, I took the opportunity to recount the fact that on January 25th, 2019, when 29 heavily armed FBI agents stormed my home at 6 o'clock in the morning to arrest me for the completely fabricated crime of lying before Congress regarding Russian collusion that we now know, based on the documents released by Tulsi Gabbard and declassified, never actually existed. It was a frame job to pressure me to testify falsely against President Donald Trump and insist that there was Russian collusion when there was none. It was an awful process, but after I was arrested and my wife and I were perp walked for the CNN cameras, I was taken handcuffed to Miramar, to the FBI's station there, to be fingerprinted and to be mug-shotted. I was handcuffed. My hands were behind my back in the car on the way for almost 2 hours in traffic. I asked the FBI officer whether he could put the cuffs to my front, and he refused. When I was there, I was fingerprinted, as I say. I had my mugshot. I was allowed to speak to my lawyers, but I chose not to speak to them in the FBI headquarters. So I thought, quite frankly, there's a high probability the conference room they had provided was probably being listened to. And they told me that the government had agreed to release me without bond. I told them I would, of course, plead not guilty. They informed me that the prosecution intended to release me without bond, which, of course, demonstrates that the whole idea that I had to be arrested in the manner I was because I was a flight risk was not true at all. If I was a flight risk, why didn't they demand a $250,000 cash bond? Anyway, by that time, I went through arraignment and the mob scene at the federal courthouse. Subsequent to being at the FBI session, I was returned to a federal courtroom. I was in a holding cell there with 3 African-American gentlemen. Unfortunately, I had been arrested at about 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:11 actually, 6 in that area. And I had not eaten. It was now 11 o'clock, and I was about to be arraigned, where I would plead not guilty upstairs in a courtroom full of reporters, reporters high-fiving each other. I, of course, had leg shackles and was cuffed at this time. I pled not guilty. I went out and spoke briefly to the crowd. It was pandemonium. I gave the famous V for victory sign. That really aggravated the liberals, but it's essentially that you show that they have not crushed your spirit. And I went home, tried to absorb the shock of it all. When I got home in the late afternoon, a phone number kept showing up on my cell phone. It was a number I did not recognize. I generally don't recognize. I don't answer calls I don't recognize. But after whoever this was called the third time, I took the call. And it was Charlie Kirk. Now, I had met Charlie Kirk in passing, but I didn't really know Charlie Kirk. And we weren't, at that point, friends. But he was very blunt and to the point. He said he had seen on CNN what every American has seen, that he was shocked, that he knew that there was no Russian collusion, as I insisted. He predicted that I would be put through a Soviet-style show trial in Washington, D.C., and that I had a horrific ahead of me. And he urged me quite candidly to turn this entire experience and my fears and my entire situation over to God, over to the Lord, to confess my sins, to put myself in God's hands. And Charlie said, if you do that, God will lift you up. God will rescue you from your persecutors. And I took that message to heart, and I must say that throughout my trial, Charlie became a very vocal critic of the prosecutors and the judge and all the other basic unfairnesses, the fact that I was never allowed to present any reasonable defense, that my prosecution was based on the false notion that the Russians had conducted an online hack of the Democrat National Committee. The government claimed it in all of their papers, but provided no proof of it because it never actually happened. The judge would not allow me to produce forensic evidence or expert testimony to prove that the files stolen from the DNC had indeed been downloaded to some kind of portable drive, taken out the back door. The download times of the files tell that story. I was not allowed to make that argument. Unlike James Comey, I was obviously not allowed to leisurely turn myself in, even though James Comey was charged with the exact same crime that I was. I made this point in my remarks to Turning Point USA. And I think the most important point that I made in that brief 10-minute speech was the fact that those who have great trepidation about the 2026 midterm elections, those who say the Republicans are certain to lose the House, do not recognize that in politics, a week is a lifetime. Secondarily, the fact that the president has laid the groundwork for the greatest economy this country will ever experience in his tax cuts, in his regulatory cuts, doing away with taxes on Social Security, doing away with taxes on tips, his regulatory cuts, a more sound monetary policy once we get a Federal Reserve Board that is not politicized, once Jerome Too Late Powell's term ends. It is outrageous to me that under Powell, the Fed cut rates deeply to help Joe Biden's reelection, even though unemployment and inflation, the two measures that the Federal Reserve is supposed to use to make that determination, are actually lower today than they were when the Fed cut rates for Joe Biden. Then they gave us this small cut when we needed a larger cut. That was a bow to public opinion, I think, because any reasonable financial analysts, people like Barry Habib, for example, will tell you that we need a rate cut. Stephen Moore, Larry Kudlow, people that I really respect. And, of course, then you had the sideshow of Lisa Cook. Lisa Cook is the Federal Reserve Board governor who got caught not only plagiarizing in her academic past, but also got caught claiming two different residences as her principal legal residence, and therefore obtaining a favorable mortgage rate and insurance rate and tax rate on one of those properties. No person can have two primary legal residences. She claimed one in Michigan. She also claimed one in Maryland, I believe. So I started calling her Dr. Lisa Crook. The president fired her, which I believe he has the right to do. She clearly, this is an act of corruption. That's what the statute says. She fought that, filed a lawsuit in the District of Columbia, and then, lo and behold, a spin of the wheel had the D.C. clerk assigning that case to a black woman judge who happens to be a sorority sister of Lisa Cook. Now, I would have thought that the Justice Department would move to recuse that judge, but they did not do so. And of course, Lisa Cook won that case. That is a temporary victory because the case is on appeal. I actually think the president has the authority to dismiss that Federal Reserve Board governor. Secondarily, I made the point that the American people expect justice and accountability for all of those criminals who tried to destroy Donald Trump and his presidency, tried to undo a legal election, tried to frame him for Russian collusion, tried to impeach him twice on false pretenses. I think we will soon see from a task force is being headed by Tulsi Gabbard, examining the security and integrity of the electronic voting machines and the challenges of the security of mail-in ballots. But I believe that there's a lot about to come out about that. The president himself has alluded to that. They went on to stage the January 6th Fedsurrection. We're just now learning that the FBI director wouldn't tell us how many undercover agents were in the crowd, how many provocateurs there were, but much has come to light that completely discredits the January 6th kabuki show that a bunch of Democrats plus Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger put on for the American people. There needs to be investigation into the investigation. This is something I think Speaker Johnson has been a little slow on. But this entire seditious conspiracy that I'm suggested continues all the way to the so-called documents case, extends all the way to Operation Arctic Frost, in which Republican members of the Senate, Republican members of the House, prominent Trump supporters, prominent conservatives, prominent church figures, prominent conservative organizations and individuals were surveilled in violation of the U.S. Constitution and the Fourth Amendment. This is one long seditious conspiracy, and the American people want justice. This is not about retribution or revenge, as the left wing says. The system must hold these nefarious actors and institutions accountable, or they won't hesitate to abuse their authority again as soon as they get the chance. Watching the way the mainstream media, the Democrats, screamed when former FBI Director James Comey, New York Attorney General Letitia James were both charged with crimes, specifically the crime of bank fraud and mortgage fraud in the case of James, and lying to Congress under oath about whether he had directed a third party to leak classified material detrimental to Donald Trump to the New York Times. The left started screaming incredulously about the abuse of power from the Trump administration. According to their rhetoric, the administration and Donald Trump are autocratic, unconstitutional, and that these are acts of political vengeance. Trump, they say, is on a rampage of revenge and retribution. Nothing could be further than the truth. In fact, those who are accusing Donald Trump of weaponizing the criminal justice system to go after his political are, in fact, the ones who have done exactly that. They're the ones who have acted extra constitutionally, violating both the law and the Constitution. They claim Trump wants to limit the free speech of his critics when, in fact, that describes precisely what they did in the mass cancellation and censorship of X and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, which we now know is done at government order with the intelligence agencies cooperating with the executives at those social media platforms. No, President Trump absolutely must, see that there is justice and accountability based on the law. And I believe that case can be brought in southern Florida because that's where the conspiracy ends, at Mar-a-Lago. And then lastly, I said in my remarks at Turning Point USA's America Fest, we must have clean elections. We must know that these electronic voting machines that we are relying on are either secure and cannot be manipulated or penetrated, or better yet, we need to do away with them entirely. If the French can count 38 million paper ballots in one day and have the count finished by the evening, well, then surely America can do the same thing. You're listening to The Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone, and we'll be back with more on the other side. So please, don't touch that dial and keep listening.
Katz and Cosby on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Katz and Cosby, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Stone Zone. I had a great time in Phoenix, Arizona. Turning Point USA has exploded in its growth since the horrific assassination of my good friend Charlie Kirk. There were 20,000 people at last year's America Fest in Phoenix. There were 30,000 this year. It is really refreshing to meet so many young, articulate conservatives. A lot of discussion about the USS Liberty, which is ironically back in the news. USS Liberty was the target, I believe, of a false flag attack that was authorized by President Lyndon Johnson, in which our Israeli allies attacked and sunk a U.S. ship and killed, I believe it was 34 crew members. This was done as a false flag, an attempt to cause a war specifically with Egypt. That Israel was responsible for the attack is now beyond dispute. And additionally, the fact that Israel carried out the attack. Now, the official story is that this was a mistake, which is hard to understand because the flag of the United States was clear for anyone to see. A lot of interest in this. It has gotten substantial coverage because it is controversial. I cover it extensively in my book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, the case against LBJ. But Ben Shapiro was asked about it in the Q&A section. Obviously, it is so the critics of Israel have focused on it. It was one of the topics of discussion. Beyond that, J.D. Vance was the speaker. He spoke after me. I actually moved and even shortened my remarks a little bit to accommodate our great vice president. But he made a very good point, which I echoed in my own remarks, which is that on the right, forming the firing squad in a circle is not very smart. Conservatives need to recognize that Hakeem Jeffries and AOC and Chuck Schumer and the money machine of Nancy Pelosi and people like Jamie Raskin and Dan Goldman are seeking desperately to regain control of the House so they can begin an endless array of investigations, impeachments, and other outrageous and baseless political maneuvers to avoid being held accountable for all the laws they broke and all the lies they told. So conservatives, by and large, need to focus on the left, need to focus on our common enemies. Now, I was asked about the controversy between Candace and Erica Kirk, for whom I have the highest possible regard, particularly the dignity and the strength and the clarity with which she has behaved in this horrific moment in which her husband was tragically cut down. I also have a high regard for much of the scholarship of Candace. But when I asked a random 5 voters when I went out to a drugstore in Phoenix, they were unaware of this fight. They all knew who Tucker Carlson was, but they all had an overwhelming view of him. I put aside my criticism of Steve Bannon because, frankly, that is a bridge too far. What we've learned about Mr. Bannon in these new Epstein emails and in these new Epstein photos, and the shocking things released in the emails that show you that Bannon was a Confederate and was advising Epstein on his public rehabilitation. This was after he had been convicted. I think that goes beyond politics, but by and large, there are people in the administration who do things that I disagree with. I try to avoid criticizing them. I think we need to stay focused on the Democrats and the fact that 2026 can either spurt this movement forward or it can stymie us for the last 2 years of what could be the greatest presidency in my lifetime. You're listening to the Stone Zone. We'll be right back.
Katz and Cosby on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Katz and Cosby, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And you're back in the Stone Zone. I'm fresh back from Phoenix, Arizona for the largest gathering of like-minded, conservative, pro-freedom, pro-family, pro-Constitution, pro-God young people. Really is inspiring, gives you great hope for the future of America. And I only had 10 minutes to speak, but I think it's worth hearing. Here it is.
First of all, let me apologize for being underdressed. On the morning of January 25th, 2019, 29 fully SWAT-clad FBI agents swarmed my home at 6 o'clock in the morning. They were brandishing fully automatic M4 assault weapons to arrest me for the completely fabricated crime of lying under oath to Congress about Russian collusion that we now know definitively never happened. There was a CNN camera 25 feet from my front door. I was told that CNN later received an award for their incisive investigative journalism that led them to believe that I would be arrested that very morning. I was arrested at 6:11. At 6:22, a producer from CNN texted a copy of my sealed indictment to my lawyer. Now, how could he have my sealed indictment that was not moved, that was not released until 11 o'clock in the morning? And if you looked at this document, it had no court stampings or timestamp, but it did have in the metadata tags the initials of the man who wrote it, Andrew Weissman, the de facto head of the Mueller witch hunt. I was taken to the FBI center in Miramar, Florida, where I was fingerprinted and mugshotted. I was taken then back to the federal courthouse in Fort Lauderdale, Virginia, where I pled not guilty. They put me in a holding cell with 3 African-American gentlemen who I think were just coming around from a bender. I asked the guard if, since it was at 6 o'clock in the morning that I was arrested and I had not eaten, it was now about 10:30, if I could get something to eat, and they said no. One of those gentlemen gave me half of his peanut butter sandwich. The other one gave me the other half of his peanut butter sandwich. I then explained the 1994 crime bill to them and the fact that African Americans had been unfairly incarcerated because of Bill Clinton and Joe Biden and their criminal justice positions. By the time I left the holding cell to go up for my arraignment, they were chanting, "Roger Stone did nothing wrong." So I pled not guilty. I was arraigned. I was released without cash bail, which is interesting because the FBI and the Justice Department and Robert Mueller insisted that I had to be arrested in this manner because I was a flight risk. Although thanks to CNN, everybody knows what I looked like, and I didn't even have a valid passport. I finally got home in the late afternoon. And then my cell phone rang, but it was a number I didn't recognize, so I didn't answer it. And then it rang again, and I still didn't answer it. Then it rang a third time. This time I answered it, and it was Charlie Kirk. And I didn't know Charlie Kirk. I'd met him once or twice, but We weren't friends. I didn't know him. And he said, I saw what happened. It is outrageous. We both know there is no Russian collusion. You and your wife are going to go through hell, you, your wife, and your family. But I want you to know that we will be with you. And I want to give you a piece of advice. Turn this horrific burden that you are about to go through, turn this horrific tribulation over to the Lord. Put yourself in the hands of God. Confess your sins, get right with the Lord, and I guarantee you, he will lift you up from your persecutors, and he will save you from the deadly snare that has been laid for you by Adam Schiff and Robert Mueller and the Clinton-Obama cabal. Charlie Kirk didn't have to do that, but I took it to heart. I went through a Soviet-style show trial in Washington, D.C. I was so naive to think that I would actually get a fair trial. Of course, long after I was convicted, only by order of a federal judge, the final Mueller report, long redacted, long hidden, was published, and it proved that they had found no evidence of Russian collusion, WikiLeaks collaboration, or any other crime on my part. That I was essentially charged to pressure me to testify falsely against President Donald Trump, which, of course, I refused to do. That Charlie Kirk came to me in my moment of doubt and pain in this time of crisis is something that I will remember for the rest of my life. I loved Charlie Kirk. And now, my friends, he is bigger in death than he ever was in life. Politics is about the future, not the past, but there is one matter we have to clean up. It has now been 156 days since the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, exposed through all of the declassified documents that the Russian collusion hoax was the greatest single dirty trick in American politics. It was an abuse of power in which the full authority of the United States government was used to topple a duly elected president. But more precisely, there was a seditious conspiracy that was born in the Oval Office in 2016 with Barack Obama present, Joe Biden, Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor, Vice President Biden, as I say, CIA Director, Islamic convert and communist CIA Director John Brennan, the FBI Director James Comey. This list goes on. My question is a simple one. It is not about revenge and retaliation. It is not about retribution. It is about accountability and justice. Will those who attempted to destroy Donald Trump, the people who not only dreamed up the Russian collusion hoax, but two phony impeachments, those responsible, in my opinion, for the theft of the 2020 election, those who staged the January 6th Fedsurrection, those who promulgated the phony documents case, and yes, those who raided Mar-a-Lago in Florida, will they be held accountable? Because this continuing seditious conspiracy ends in Florida, the correct jurisdiction is not Washington, D.C., where no Republican, no freethinker, no Trump supporter can receive a fair trial. The proper venue is South Florida, and I call for justice. Donald Trump has laid the groundwork for the greatest comeback in America's history because of his tax cuts, because of his regulatory cuts. And once we get a Federal Reserve Board that is non-political and get the interest rate cuts that Americans deserve based on the low inflation rate and the low unemployment rate, this will be the strongest economy in American history. Food prices are down, but they are not down low enough, and they're not down as low as they're going to go. Gas prices are down, and they're coming down very quickly. Inflation is low. Unemployment is low. See, I worked for Ronald Reagan. I remember those who were panicking in 1982. So I say to you, do not be a panicant. The president has appointed Tulsi Gabbard to a task force to examine the integrity and the security of electronic voting machines. I'm very hopeful that this is going to prove once and for all that the American people were robbed in 2020. And despite that, despite the fact that they tried to jail him, they tried to break him financially, they tried to keep him off the ballot in 50 states, scored the greatest single comeback in American political history. And if you keep faith with him and faith with the Lord, he will lead America to an unprecedented era of peace, prosperity, justice, and law and order. Thank you, and God bless you.
I'm glad that we got to play the entire speech. I kind of summed it up for you in the beginning of the show. J.D. Vance had a very, very big day in Phoenix because Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, the head of Turning Point Action, which is the political arm of Turning Point, said that Turning Point Action would support J.D. Vance for the 2028 Republican nomination, an enormous step up. Let's listen to a little bit of J.D. Vance, who gave a very, very strong and I think excellent speech.
But ask yourself, what do all of these people have in common? And the unfortunate answer is they are puppets. They don't actually matter. They are cogs in a machine that wants to make you poorer, that wants to make you less powerful, and wants to make you less safe in the country your ancestors built. And while President Trump and I are doing everything we can to break that machine, the left is still there, my friends, and they are still very powerful. Don't delude yourselves. It's the activist groups who want to poison your kids with hormone replacement therapy and toxins in your water supply. It's the corporate boardrooms pushing diversity quotas while whining about the fact that Donald Trump won't let them ship American jobs overseas anymore, and boo-hoo to that. It's the rogue district judges who issued nationwide injunctions every time the president lifts a finger. It's the Soros DAs who cheered on as their cities burn. What unites them? They win when our country loses. They get rich when you get poorer. They hire the illegals that they bring in to take your jobs. They drink fine wine in the countries they ship your jobs to. They censor you because they'd rather destroy the Constitution than risk losing an argument. They bring in millions of voters because they know they can't win the argument with the people who are already here. And you know what else unites them? We are going to kick their ass next November and every year after that.
J.D. Vance on the attack as a good vice president should be, scoring big points with the MAGA base. Here's another cut of J.D.
More than any time I can recount, people are talking about American identity and figuring out what it is that unites us. But I want to say something here. The only thing that has truly served as an anchor of the United States of America is that we have been, and by the grace of God, we always will be a Christian nation. Now, I want to be explicit because, of course, the fake news media will twist everything that I say. I'm not saying Do you feel about them the same way I do? I'm not saying you have to be a Christian to be an American. I'm saying something simpler and truer. Christianity is America's creed. The shared moral language from the Revolution to the Civil War and beyond. Across that history, our country's major debates have always centered on how we could best as a people please God. That creed, think about it. That creed motivated our understanding of natural law and rights, our sense of duty to one's neighbor, the conviction that the strong must protect the weak, and the belief in individual conscience. Even our famously American idea of religious liberty is a Christian concept. Because we're all creatures of God, we must respect each individual's pathway to that God. But over the last 50 years, there has been a singular focus, a war that has been waged on Christians and Christianity in the United States of America. And let me say, of all the wars that Donald Trump has ended, that is the one we're proudest of.
J.D. Vance, the vice president, with a rousing speech to student conservatives at Turning Point USA in Phoenix. You're listening to the Stone Zone. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Katz and Cosby on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Katz and Cosby, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. A lot of talk in Phoenix about accountability and justice. Now a retired FBI agent has come forward to say that Attorney General Pam Bondi has a slam dunk conspiracy case he accuses her of sitting on, with former federal agents and prosecutors aggressively and blatantly weaponizing law enforcement to influence elections. John Gilliam spoke to Just the News, argued that the Justice Department today has ample grounds to pursue charges against officials who relentlessly targeted President Donald Trump, while also at the same time shielding prominent Democrats, according to him, including Hillary Clinton, from serious scrutiny. We learned just days ago that the FBI was specifically ordered not to look into the pay-for-play system around the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative. And that is yet another example of the epic corruption that pointed to documents turned over to Congress by Attorney General Bondi and by FBI, which he claims show agents were blocked, as I say, from investigating Clinton-related corruption while being overruled when they objected to overly aggressive actions against President Donald Trump, including, of course, the infamous raid on his home. Just as the FBI rooted through Melania's underwear drawer, they rooted through my wife's underwear drawer. I understand the feeling of violation, but it is now clear that there were many in the Justice Department who thought that they had no probable cause to justify the raid on a former president's home. Many in the FBI felt that way, but they were overruled by the overly politicized Justice Department run by Merrick Garland. Thank God Merrick Garland did not get to be a Supreme Court judge. This is one of the few things that Senator Mitch McConnell deserves credit for. I totally and completely agree that the entire movement is looking to see whether we have justice. Meanwhile, in Fulton County, Georgia, shocking news, what election integrity experts have been saying all along, that there was major voter fraud in Fulton County, and that 315,000 votes which were legally required to have the signatures of poll workers in order to be tabulated, were wrongfully counted. They destroyed Mayor Rudy Giuliani's career. They tried to. He's an indomitable spirit, but they seek to stop him from ever practicing law and to break him financially. But it turns out that Rudy and the late police commissioner Bernard Kerik and indeed President Donald Trump, in his famous conversation with Secretary of State Raffensperger, was absolutely right. There was a fraud in Georgia, which turned that election to Joe Biden on a very narrow basis. This is the second, I would say, proof that the last election. But I wait now with bated breath for the conclusions of this task force that Tulsi Gabbard is heading, studying the security and the vulnerability and the manipulability of electronic voting machines. I am told through sources that there is substantial evidence of manipulation by both the Venezuelans and the Communist Chinese, but that remains to be seen whether those make it past the Central Intelligence Agency and others who may not be so anxious to have an examination of how elections have been manipulated online. We'll be back to talk about a lot more of this in the Stone Zone. Thanks for joining us today. Until we meet again, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to Katz and Cosby with John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. You can hear Katz and Cosby weekdays at 5. It's the 5 o'clock show on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
This is Roger Stone. The holidays are here, and it's the time of year when travel, crowds, and cold weather mean one thing. Everybody's getting sick. And in moments like this, you don't want to rely on the bureaucracy, the nonsense, or the slow-moving medical machine. You want control. You want to be prepared. You want options. That's why I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy, a company that actually puts you in charge of your health. You can go to allfamilypharmacy.com/stone, place your order online, and a licensed physician reviews it. Once approved, your medication ships directly to your doorstep. Fast, private, and secure. So whether you're looking for ivermectin, antibiotics, or everyday maintenance medications, All Family Pharmacy now has you covered. No waiting rooms, no runaround, no interference. This holiday season, don't gamble with your health or your family's health. Stay prepared, stay protected, stay in control. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/stone and now save 10% with code STONE10. Take charge of your health because nobody cares about your freedom more than you do.